See you later. Here we go. But I'm handsome.
And a good Thursday evening, everybody. Chris McDonald with you on another McFiles broadcast. We're always grateful to have brand new guests with us tonight, and we are honored to have a very wonderful new guest, Mike Wayman, costsforfreedom.us. And if you're looking in that picture, you see that big old bus right there. There we go. And look at that. Isn't that that's what we call in the South, that's what we call a ride. And he carries that all over the country, producing freedom. Mike, you're a great patriot, and we are just honored. I want to thank Magdalene Rose, our sweet goddaughter, tonight for connecting me and Mike. And by the way, folks, for those of you listening, Mike's going to be with us about a half hour, 40 minutes or so, and we got Bill Federer coming up right behind him. So it's going to be a wonderful McFiles Thursday. But, man, I tell you, we've got a jam-up guest. Mike, I'll tell you what I told you privately. You're a guest for about 10 minutes here on this network. We got such a loving bunch. You'll become our family after that. So you're always welcome here tonight. But we want to welcome you and thank you for being with us on the McFiles. It is a deep pleasure to have you tonight, sir.
Well, no, thank you, and it's showtime.
It is showtime. Yes, it is. Mike, before we get into some country stuff and the national scene and all what's going on in the nation, tell us a little bit about what you do and how you came. You were telling me a little bit of the story beforehand, but I want to share it with the audience tonight because that's an incredible. I wished I could take some time off and just get in that thing with you, man, and ride the country. That's such a great thing that you're doing. And if I was just riding down the road and I saw the outside of it, I'd be inspired to go fight the Revolutionary War again, man. So that's pretty good stuff. But tell us a bit how you got to this place and what you do with this, because it's a major undertaking, I'm sure, to carry this thing around the country. Go ahead.
No, it is. So how it kind of all started was back in around August of 2024, and I have a 51 Willys pickup truck that was in a video that was done up in Big Bear Lake. And if you look online, Jelly Roll Big Bear Lake, you'll see my 51 Willys pickup. And then after that shoot, there was some discussion about having him come up here and maybe do a benefit and a benefit to give back to the community, let's just say. And across the lake in Big Bear, I have a park that Shirley Jones of the Partridge Family used to
Yeah.
own, if you remember her.
Yeah.
And in the park is a piece of the World Trade Center. And that was
Wow.
dedicated by Rudy Giuliani. And so it sits in the park to this day. And so then as a person saw my truck, said, hey, would you be interested in allowing us to use the truck and see if we can get Jelly Roll up here to do a benefit? And I said, well, I'll do one better. I've got a park that has a piece of the World Trade Center in it, and let's do it. So I started working on the motorhome, and at first I was just going to put a banner, and I thought it'd be a good 9/11 soft launch for Trump 2024. And then as I started thinking about it, I thought, now, I mean, if I'm jump in, I'm jumping in. So I designed the motorhome. As you see, it's got the bookends. At one end you have Iwo Jima, Martin Luther King. You have Kennedy, both Kennedys. Of course, Donald J. Trump, and unfortunately now Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
And that motorhome represents, when you look at it, all the people on that have either died, been assassinated, or shot at. So you and I could vote for who we want without these wacky people saying, you're this because of that. So at the end of the day, even though the predominant picture you see is Donald J. Trump, at the end of the day, it's about our freedom of speech, and that's who I voted for. So that's the way it goes. You don't like it, then go get your own motorhome.
Go get your own country. The way I look at it, I think it's great. And Mike, it's so funny. We're in the middle of this trial right now, and I'm sure that I was watching a little bit of it today, and it's a stark reminder. We're coming up on a year of Charlie Kirk's assassination, and I do believe he is a modern-day martyr that we will miss for a long time. I see our president, and you and I both know that it was that close, man. I mean, it was probably not even the width of our hand, that had he not turned his head, we could be having a different conversation tonight about this country than we're having. And, we're watching this party, this Democrat Party that's posing as a political party, which is nothing but a terrorist group. And they have gone so far rabid left, so far jihadist, so far communist, that I don't think we can say without hesitation tonight they've become a bigger threat to us than even Iran tonight. They're a bigger threat to this country than any force that we have fought outside the nation since the Revolutionary War, to be frank with you. And, I want to get your opinion about that, because unless people go to the polls and vote these people out of power, they're going to keep trying to do what they're doing. And eventually, I hate to say it, Mike, and I don't mean this with any disrespect to the voters, I worry about our nation and people that vote for these people. And there's a lot of people that actually do vote for them. And it's sad, because we shouldn't be even, these people shouldn't even be in a conversation within a million miles of power of government. Yet they are.
No, and that's exactly right. And it's like California, we're in a war out here. And at the end of the day, we are in a war. We're in a war for survival. We're in a war for good versus evil, or common sense. Let's just call it common sense, right? And so the left, and I drove the whole country, Chris. I spent 15 months in that motorhome zigzagging the country. And here's the good news. 75 to 80% of the people that I ran across are either moderate or red. And you wouldn't think so. Like California, people say, oh, California is blue. No, it's not.
I've heard.
It's red. I can tell you, right? I live here. I know what time it is. And so it's these pockets of the cheat, the corruption that goes on. And fortunately, there's groups out there that are striving, making great strides in this election fraud cleanup. Voter ID. I mean, come on. I live part-time in Costa Rica. You ready? And so when I tell people that, to vote here, you don't need ID, they go, what are you talking about? I mean, we have to show ID, and we have to just about get fingerprinted to vote. And so at the end of the day, to cast a vote of that importance, there needs to be some, what do you want to call it? There needs to be some credibility on who's voting. And that credibility is, look, you go to the grocery store, can I see your ID? You go to wherever you go, let me see your ID, right? And it should be the same thing. So the left has just gotten so out of control. And the interesting thing is, it's the loudest mouths, let's just call them 1%ers, that the media goes right to. And that's what you're seeing. It's kind of like the soccer players coming here in the US, and they're going, wow, I mean, this is actually a great country. I mean, we were told it was a bunch of garbage.
It's a great point.
And the funny part about it is they're in LA Inglewood. I mean, come on. You think that's the cream of the crop of the US? Not even close.
Not even close. And you make a great point about the World Cup people. I was actually it encouraged me, and I know our U.S. team didn't finish as good as we thought they would have, but honestly, and let people forget, U.S. has never had a good soccer team. I mean, we've never done well in the World Cup, but there was something different about this year's team, and I think more than anything else, Mike, they loved our country. You didn't see any of this kneeling, you didn't see any of this woke crap with like Naomi Rapace and that bunch of the women's team that disrespected the country 4 years ago, that disgraced themselves, and we were all rooting for this team because they loved America. And it goes to your point. What was shocking to me is, like you exactly said, the people that came into the country, so many left saying, we were told that you all were nothing but a bunch of bigots, homophobics, haters of people, selfish, greedy. And we found out that you folks are the best people on the face of this earth. And many of them said, I wish we could stay. That's foreign countries. And we don't even have our own people loving our country like that. That bothers me tonight, brother. That bothers me that we don't have that same enthusiasm, and we better get it. And I'll tell you why.
Well, Chris, we do have, and it's you and I and people, let's just say Americans that contribute. And look, at the end of the day, cost of freedom, the reason I name it costforfreedom.us is there is a cost for freedom. Sometimes it's economic, sometimes it's mental, and sometimes it's physical, or it's all three. And guess what? There is a cost. And so I understand that people are reluctant to, let's just say, carry the flag. But guess what? You better start carrying the flag. You better start letting people know that, hey, listen, it's okay. Go vote for who you want. But you know what? America, there is not a greater country in the world than the U.S. And these soccer players who travel the world are saying, wow, I wish we could stay. And I'll tell you this, Chris. I had a guy, I was at the Nixon Library about a week and a half ago. Vance was there, Vice President Vance, and there was a little protest going on. And there was a guy across the street with his little furry outfit on, and he was protesting that they didn't have a cat box and wherever they want a cat box, right? And across the street, there are some Iranian people, playing the Star Spangled Banner, saying "Trump help us," right?
Right.
I mean, yeah, what a contrast. And so I walked across the street, and there's this guy there, and I said, so, tell me about what you're doing. He told me, I go, look, let's just do this. Instead of getting in all the weeds of all this nonsense, let's make it easy. This is the greatest country in the world.
It is.
He goes, no, it's not. I go, really? Tell me the one that is. Now, you ready for this one, Chris? He said, and I'll say it, China. And I said, so what is it about China that you think is so great? And he started naming a couple things. I said, look, buddy, here's my card. There's my cell phone. I'm buying you, whenever you want, a first-class ticket to China. And you can go, but you have to stand on the corner in that fuzzy outfit and scream the same crap.
Come on, buddy. Come on.
And I go, the beauty? I don't have to worry about paying round trip because you're not coming back, Jackson.
No, and Mike, that's the thing that people don't get tonight. And I've been screaming this all week about our country. Look, we may have our problems and we may have our flaws, but I've been not overseas a lot, but I've been overseas some. And even in my short adventures overseas, and I would never trade this country for any country on this planet. And the freedoms that we have tonight that are not guaranteed by any other nation in the world. And I think you brought up something a while ago. And, I look at that van and I look at those people that have died, assassinated or killed or whatever. We have had bloodshed for these rights and these freedoms that these spoiled punks and these spoiled kids will never understand in a generation. And it grieves me that it's not just those kids, it's adults. I see these adults act in the same way, and I see the media act in the same way. And it is disrespectful, and it hurts. And I think it hurts those people that we do get the price that's been paid, the cost for freedom, which is your movement. And I think it's one of the best movements. The second, when Magdalene sent me this tonight, and I saw your website, I jokingly told her, I said, I got a feeling this is going to be a guest. This is going to be a McFiles guest tonight because he's going to fit right at home here because we preach this every night that we don't need to take for granted these freedoms because, Mike, once they're gone, If we keep doing the stuff that we're doing, we're going to give this stuff away. And I'll just say this, and I'll let you take it back. It's like, you mentioned the Costa Rica thing and the voter ID and the way that they respond. Why is it that we do this stuff to ourselves? We have the most self-inflicted wounds of any nation on this planet. It's not like people are putting a gun to our head to commit voter fraud. All it takes is just enforcing the laws, make somebody show an ID. If they don't show an ID, they don't get to vote. It's not complicated to me. But we do this stuff to ourselves. We let these illegals in. We let these communists run their mouth. And I know we got freedom of speech, but I'm going to tell you something. If you're subverting the government of the United States of America and you're calling for jihad, that no longer is free speech, brother. I'm sorry. No. You're getting your backside in jail or out of this country tomorrow. If I'm president, you're gone. That's just how I look at it. That's not free speech. But we're letting these people do it to us without a shot being fired. By the way, that's what Khrushchev warned us about. He said, I'm going to take you over without firing a shot. That's prophetic. Yeah. What you say?
And so that's exactly right. So at the end of the day, bottom line is that, we have a certain responsibility as Americans.
Yes, we
have
do.
a certain responsibility to let people know. We have a responsibility that we see something like, for example, she, them, that. No, we're not playing that game. Okay, go home. You can be whatever you want in the privacy of your home, but as soon as you start affecting my life and telling me who I'm going to vote for, then we got a problem. As a matter of fact, you know what? I've had people say, well, I don't like, who's on I like everything, but I don't like Trump on the motorhome. I got an idea for you. Go get your own. Go drive the country. Go talk to people throughout the country. And I'm telling you, Chris, on the website, causeforfreedom.us, you look at some of those videos, the wackiness like you've never seen. And again, you just wonder, where are these people coming from? And it's a culture. It goes back to the schooling. It goes back to, look at school. I mean, most kids now, they can't even really tell you who's some of the president. They have no idea what's going on. All they know is that, they want a furry cat box or they deal with that kind of nonsense. It's just all this garbage. But let me say this real quick. So what's interesting, Chris, is this. We have 4th of July, right? We have Labor Day. We have Memorial Day. But wait a minute. We have Gay Pride Month.
Well, Come on.
We have, right? And so our these influences that people just, I'm not going to get involved. You know what? Get involved, because it's about you, your family, and your future, right?
Without a doubt. But that's right. And I'm going to tell you something else. It's turned out that we've got election month. And what the Supreme Court did last week by extending this deadline from election day was a disgrace. It's a slap in the face of every American that gets up, goes to that poll, stands in line, votes, and goes home on election day. It's not election month. Alito and the other justices argued right. This birthright citizenship, I'm going to ask you about this. I heard today a report that Mexico was putting billboards up offering almost $4,000 for people to come to the United States, have babies, and Amy Coney Barrett got wind of this. And I don't know if this report is true or not, but I hope it is, that she got so mad when she saw this that Trump, I think it's why Trump tweeted out today. He said, I'm sort of pushing the Supreme Court to rehear this birthright citizenship case. And they're saying if it goes back to the Supreme Court, that Barrett is going with the majority. She's going with the other justices, and that's going to stop this stuff. That was the worst SCOTUS decision in my years on this earth. And look, I've not followed politics all my life, but the last 10 years or so I have, very strongly. I'm going to tell you something, brother. If they allow these illegals to come in here and have these babies, we are done. We are just done. And I hope that's true. But, and I'm going to just throw this at you about California. And I got some other things I'm going to ask you about. But about California. California is sort of ground zero for a lot of this stuff with Gavin Newsom, is it not?
Absolutely. And that's why with the motorhome being back here in Cali right now, there's this push. I was in up in April in Stockton. They were having this voter fraud, a bunch of people there and going through, how these ballots have all been hijacked and all this kind of stuff. And so it is ground zero because, again, what do we have? 54 delegates. But at the end of the day, look, let's just use common sense, right? Okay. So what other country will allow you to go into the country and mooch off the system, vote for their president.
They won't.
Huh? I'll
None.
tell you how many. Watch. Zero.
Zero.
And
Zero.
so we get, and so look, we have it so good. We're kind of like, well, I don't want to say all of us, but look, we go outside, nice weather, where you're at, you go in the grocery store, it's all air conditioned. We have all the amenities and luxury of life. Is there poverty? Absolutely, right? But on the flip side is, we've gotten to the point where we become complacent. And so I tell people, about the motor, I call it the war machine.
I
It's
like
a
that.
war. It's a war. I don't know
I
what
like
else.
that, buddy.
If George
It
would have hopped in the little rowboat and gone across the Potomac, we would still be some colonies, right?
Well, you think about that. If you think about this generation compared to that generation, look, you think about this generation compared to World War II. I watched the movie, and I can't think of the name now. Brandon Fraser starred as Ike, and it was Endurance or something like that. And it was about the D-Day, how the weather affected the decision to go on D-Day. And I thought about the perseverance of those troops that many of them knew going into that D-Day event, Mike, they were going to dead. The second those battalions opened their doors in the ocean, many of them it was instant death. And they kept pushing in and pushing into Normandy. And I think that's what concerns me. And I'm going to use my goddaughter as a great example. I don't mind bragging on her publicly. I always do. There's a spirit in her that she understands this. There are some young people that get it, like Magdalene Rose. There are some young people that get it. But me and you are of a different generation. Our generation has seen our nation at a time when these things mattered. This generation, this is foreign to them. This is absolutely foreign to them about sacrifice and about loving something more than yourself, and that your freedom is something you fight for. And what did Reagan say? He said it's just one generation away from being yanked, that each generation has to teach the next generation. And I'll go back to something you said a while ago. I'm not going to lay it all on the schools, but I will tell you, you're right. It is education, but I'm laying it more on mom and daddy. I'm laying it on more on the breaking down of the homes and the dysfunctionality of our homes, because mom and daddy has done a poor job. We all have, and I'll take responsibility myself. We have messed up somewhere along this road conveying these thoughts to these kids because they just don't get it in most of them's heads. And this is why you're seeing, I think, this surge. And if you look at these socialists, these communist candidates that are winning, they're all young. They're all in their early 20s. Except for Grandpa Bernie, who I'm not so sure is even alive. Maybe that's a robot that's walking around with the freaky hair. God help me. God help me if I start looking like Bernie Sanders when I get in that hair going like, somebody please put me out of my misery. But anyway, I'll just leave it at that. But seriously though, it's these young kids, is it not? And that's on us, Mike. That's on this generation. We've not taught this next generation what this freedom's about.
Well, there's truth that, and on the flip side is that at a very young age, people know right from wrong, right?
Yes.
And people that choose to do more right things than wrong things that make the difference. Not become compliant, not say, well, I'm not going to do this because, no, listen, you need to take responsibility. Here's the challenge. It's your country. It's everybody's country. That's the beauty of the U.S. It's my country. It's your country. You can claim it as your country. And so that's what we need to do. And again, letting the media get away with what they get away with. Look, in this last election, it's pretty clear that everybody's sick of the media. Look at what is Bill Maher. I mean, these far wacky going Roseanne Barr craziness. I mean, you know what? Leave, go to another country, hit the road, Jack. I mean, be done with it. But you know what? She likes the money here, doesn't she? They like the money. They like the fame. They like all the great things. But yet when it comes down to taking a stand, right? They're like, well, I don't want to offend people. No, it's not about offending people. It's about your given right that when you want to vote, you vote for who you want. Period.
Yes.
End of day. Next.
Well said. Well said. Absolutely agree 1,000,000%. I do want to ask you some specific things about your state, and then I'm going to get more into your travels because what you're doing. There's been a part of me my whole life that would love to do exactly what you're doing right now. Just getting in an RV and driving this country. I had a dear friend, Shannon Washington, who's listening tonight, and he asked me tonight over dinner, he said, do you fly to these places that you go? And I said, no, I like to drive. And, he said, well, I like to fly to get there quick. And I said, I'm a little different. I like to see our country. I like to drive the roads and see these cities and see the landmarks and just take in the American experience, because I love this country. I love the cities. I love the people. I love the flavor. And I've always wanted to do what you're doing. But I want to ask you a question about California. Do you think that, number one, it's a two-part question. Do you think Spencer Pratt, and I don't think this is a hard one, I think he won that mayoral election in L.A.
He won 100%.
I think he beat even Karen Bass.
He 100% won.
The bigger question is, do you think Hilton is going to have enough votes and enough Republicans to support him to overcome this same strategy? Because I don't think that the people are, I think they're so sick of Newsom that Hilton has a legitimate shot. Now, I'm not saying he's going to win, because he's got an uphill battle. I'd vote for him 10 times and twice on Sunday if I could be out there. But do you think that he's going to have the support behind him from the Republican establishment? Not many others, but the Republicans themselves. Are they going to get behind him and pull this out in November? Because I think y'all got a crossroads, buddy. I think you've got a chance. If he gets in that office, he's gonna be a Trump. He's going to clean house. And I'm going to tell you something. I believe a lot of this fraud and a lot of these things that the Democrats have been hiding is going to explode. I think he's going to pull the Band-Aid off. And I think America's going to be shocked at what California's had happen to it over the last 2 decades. And I'm pulling for him. But do you think he's got a chance?
Okay, great question. So a couple response to it. Number one, California is red. So it's Reagan red. It's been Reagan red for a long time. You have these pockets, LA, Sacramento, etc. My personal belief is that, number one, we're going red. Number two, that this cheating is going to be cut off at the knees as it gets closer to election, right? All this cheating and garbage. And so do I think it's going to be a fair election? Remember the saying, it's too big to rig? Right?
Yes.
And so there's enough people in California that said, look, we're tired of it. We have the highest gas prices. We have the highest taxes. We have the most waste of money. I mean, and it's insane. To answer your question, yes, I believe California is going red in for 2026.
Do you think that there is going to be any legs on this indictment with Newsom's wife? Do you think this goes anywhere? I think I personally believe they're in some serious trouble. But again, I've seen this before. These people in power, they always find a way to wiggle out of this. But I think people we need to pay more attention to what they're basically claiming. The Newsoms have been neck deep in fraud in that state. And I tell you, his presidential hopes are gone anyway after these fires. But do you think that there's a chance that him and his wife could be facing federal prison? Because they've done some criminal stuff, Mike. I've never seen a more corrupt couple in my life, other than Bill and Hillary. Honestly, other than Bill and Hillary, I've never seen two crooked like these two.
Well, and as you know, Nancy Pelosi is his aunt, right?
Is his aunt, yes.
And so, again, it's nothing but corruption. And so you have people out there like Nick Shirley that have started to expose things that, run into these block walls. But at the end of the day, Californians are just sick of the nonsense. We are one of the fourth or fifth largest, I think it's fifth economy in the world, right? And you've got some knucklehead that's just pillaging it along with Sacramento and whatever they can get away with. And so I do believe that there's going to be a lot of pressure put on them. I believe that, yes, it's definitely hurt Newsom's chances big time, right? Whether they go to prison or not, it's kind of like, how come Hillary's not in prison? How come?
It's a great point. It's a great question.
Like you said, do they wiggle out of it? It seems that way, right? But at the end of the day, you know what we want? We want a red state.
We want a red state, buddy. I'd
rather have her not in prison and have a red state than her in prison and a blue state.
And that's a great way to look at it. That's an excellent way to look at it, and I'm with you. My state of Tennessee's red. My wife's state of Alabama's red. we don't have to worry about these things, but I know that we pull for you folks out west. And I've been told what you've said tonight about California being red. You're not the only one that's told me this. I've heard that, and I believe that because I've got family out there and friends, and in that rural area, you get away from the suburban areas of San Francisco, San Diego, L.A., Sacramento, even. If you was to take those four cities out and just have a straight up vote, I think Democrats wouldn't hold an office for 70 years, to be frank with you. But
even if you left them in place, but you just made it where they couldn't cheat as bad as they do, they would still lose. And so again, driving the country, and here's a newsflash. You ready? Connecticut's red.
That's very true. I don't doubt that.
Right?
I don't doubt that.
Okay, I'm telling you, driving that motorhome, I was driving out there with the Amish on the dirt roads. I mean, I'm just telling you. And so every place I went, you would see your pockets of blue, right? And I pull up in that 48,000 pound, 45-foot monster, and people, it's like a rally cry. You have people coming out, go, man, we're glad you're here. We're so sick of this crap. I was in downtown Manhattan in that motorhome, and people say to me, really? What was that like? You know what? The people that work there, they love Trump.
Yeah, I believe that. I've been up there to New England. I believe you. I do. New Yorkers have told me that the country gets offended at Trump stuff. They said he's just like us. They said we don't get offended at it. We act the same up here, and it don't bother us. I do want to ask you a question about Trump, and I'm going to get to your travels because you brought up something that sort of led to me another question. We all witnessed this horror back on July the 13th of 24. And as I said, you've got that beautiful picture there. And I've got a shirt that's got that fight. And that became his mantra for 24. Do you believe that the threat has increased or decreased since July? Because, I don't know if people realize this. There's probably been 5 attempts on his life. You count this recent ballroom incident. And then Iran they've got posters all over Iran tonight saying we will kill Trump. Israel, I read a story tonight out of the Washington Post, I believe, or one of those magazines, that Israel warned Trump this week that they had intelligence that Iran had basically put a hit on him. And Trump even mentioned it. He's mentioned it the last couple of days, so it's got his attention. But do you think he's in more danger tonight or less danger than he was when that incident occurred on your bus?
He's in more danger than he's ever been in. And I say that because just my travels in the motorhome and the wacky people, what they do, just because they don't like a picture, forget about, John F. Kennedy's on there, forget about Robert Kennedy's on there, forget about, Martin Luther King, and they can't get past the scene Donald Trump. And what's interesting is, they say, I hate him. I had a gal, are you ready? At the Nixon Library, walk up to that motorhome, point to Trump, not at the library, in the library, but where I was staged. Point to that motorhome. I said, hey, you want a picture with it? She walked up to it, pointed to Donald Trump and said, it's too bad they missed. Now, if I was going to guess, she was probably in her late 50s.
Wow.
65.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's there. I mean, I've been assaulted, not, like fist fights, but assaulted, getting cameras knocked out of my hands and all kinds of nonsense 5 times around that motorhome. And I'm just telling you that motorhome is, when I go somewhere in that motorhome, it doesn't matter where I go, it's a magnet. And what I'm finding is it's very few and far between proportionately, even in Santa Monica, California, of people that just lose it about Trump. It's just the wackies. And the wackies, they have no filters.
Mike, they don't, but my question would be to them, what are they going to do when Trump's gone? And they don't have him to react with this TDS. Because, look, Trump, I wish he could run a 3rd term. I think he deserves it after what they did to him in 2020 myself. But the reality is that 28, he's not going to be able to run for president, at least as of now. And what are these lefties and these loonies and these crazies going to do? Who are they going to take their TDS out on then? And it makes me wonder if it's people like you and me and others that they are now going to go after because, Trump has always said this. There's one of the most famous memes that he's ever done to me was when he's sitting down, he's pointing at the camera, and he says, you think that they want me. The truth is they want to come after you. I'm just standing in the way. And I believe that. I believe the hatred is not just for Trump, but it's for his supporters. It's for people like in this audience tonight and listening to us all over this world tonight that love conservative values, that love freedom, that love democracy, that believe in a republic, which is for the people, by the people, and of the people. And I think that we all need to understand that we're on that bus with you right now.
Chris, we're in a war. We're in a war, right? We're in a war for so that our country can continue on past 250 years. We're in a war of what's common sense and right. Now, to answer your question, what will these people do? You know what? They'll find something else, right?
That's true. No, that's true.
Listen, they'll find something else to lose it over, right?
That's true. I got to ask you, you sort of led me to my next question. I know you said 15 months. What has been some of the craziest stuff that you've seen out there? And I'm going to make this a positive and a negative question, and not really negative, but I know you've seen some crazy stuff. But if you had to list maybe your top 5 moments on this journey, what would you say they would be?
Well, let's see, there's hundreds of them. So when I say hundreds, compared to the tens of thousands of people that I've seen, but to answer your question, so probably, one of the craziest was in Long Island. The motorhome was out. This guy walks up to it, and it's actually on causeforfreedom.us, one of the videos. And you start getting into some of these dialogues, and you don't confront them. You just kind of like say, hey, look, let's just agree it's the best country in the world. But one of the questions I always ask is, well, you know what? Besides being the best country in the world, let's just agree that men shouldn't be in women's restrooms. Well, this guy was like, no, it's okay for them to be there. Really? And so then I said, well, what about, do you have any kids? What about if do you think men should be competing against women? Well, why not? Okay, well, how about this one? How about, your little daughter in the dressing room and some biological man walks in and dressed? What do you think about that? And he said, well, it's up to you to make sure, that, it's okay. But he didn't see a problem with that happening. As I'm going to tell you something, what would happen if that happened in normal? It wouldn't be good. So having said that, that was one crazy moment. Another crazy, and they're very similar. When you talk to them and you say, hey, well, Trump's a rapist, Trump's this, and the irony is, it's just what they're reading. It's just what people tell them. When you ask them, well, let's just agree on something that we both can agree on. Very simple. They say, well, you don't understand. That's the out. They either say you don't understand or they just flip you off and walk away. And it's very consistent. It's not like, way off mark of their game plan, right? So that would be just one instance, but there were a lot of instances like that. But compared to the amount of people that I saw when I drive down the road, people pull up, fist pump, honk their horn, pull into even, a Target parking lot, the amount of people that come up. And by the way, on the motorhome, if you look on the website, you'll see a virtual tour inside. It's a museum. I have an Abraham Lincoln signature. I've got, of course, Donald Trump. I've got Roosevelt. I've got Eisenhower. I've got Charlie Kirk's signature, which I met. And so it's about our history and it's about common sense. End of day, that's what it's about.
Absolutely, buddy. I want to ask you, we got about 10 more minutes. I was going to keep you half hour, but I've already kept you 45, so might as well just go and get my money's worth out of you tonight.
Yeah.
But seriously, as you watch this trial unfold with Charlie Kirk, I feel like the prosecution is doing all they can. I think they're presenting a great case so far. This judge seems to be a little wishy-washy. How confident are you that justice is going to be served on Tyler Robinson? And I've got a few comments about him. Look, I'm a pastor. I pray for people's souls, and I care for all people, even those that have done these dastardly deeds. I pray for their soul, Mike. I really do. But justice must be done for Charlie Kirk and his widow. That mother and those babies are fatherless tonight, and she's lost her husband because of the hatred of this kid. His life is basically over. No matter what happens in this trial, his life is as good as done. And I pray for his parents, but I also believe that this is where we're teetering as a nation on oblivion and chaos. Because if we keep letting these murderers get away with murder, And I have to tell you, there's this part of me that I'm thinking, the prosecution's presenting an ironclad case, but in America's justice system right now, you can literally kill somebody and text your gay lover that I did it. And I'm going to tell you something, buddy. The way the justice system is messed up right now, it's 50-50. I mean, it's 50-50 that a jury's going to convict you. That's how bad we've gotten here. But do you have confidence that the jury's going to do the right thing here?
Well, so it's ironic that you frame it that way, because first of all, we all know OJ is guilty. So,
yes, we do. Yes.
Tyler Robinson, was he? This is my personal thing. Was he alone? No. But having said that, ultimately, Tyler, or whatever this guy's name is, has to answer not to you and I, right? He's got a bigger answer later.
Said that somebody tonight. Exactly.
Yeah. So yes, I think justice will be done. But having said that, is the conviction justice? No. The justice is people understanding that they just can't go around and conspire to kill people just because they disagree, or assault them. Or look at the people that, when I say it this way, that I've met that say, well, I really support Trump, but, I mean, I just don't want to say something. It's like, well, you don't have to say anything, but at the end of the day, you're not forbidden to wear a red hat. I have a hat that says relax, it's just a red hat. Right? And people give that a 3 look, And so, right? It's like, all right. So what's interesting is,
no, it's true.
Yeah. You know who coined that phrase, make America great again? You know who did that? Ronald Reagan.
That's exactly right. That's a good point.
Look at Ronald Reagan's speeches. And so when you think about it, what is wrong with saying make America great again?
Nothing.
Just like California, I have a hat that says make California great again. What is wrong with that? Nothing. Make the whatever team you want, make them great again, right? And so the US is our team, right? We want the starting quarterback in there. We don't want people like the Waltzes of the world that just coattail it. Same with Harris and etc. So we have a certain responsibility to act a certain way, even in public. And what's interesting is almost all the time. Take Charlie Kirk, for instance, as let's just say the top example. I never once saw him berate someone.
I didn't either.
People walk up to that podium and they say F you and this and that and F you and and he would just say, well, listen, let's talk about facts. Listen, when you talk about facts, that's the light that people don't want to see, and that's when they run. That's like a cockroach.
Well said.
On the light, they run. Fact and truth is the light.
What I've taken away tonight from this talk with you is that I think that we have some optimism that the country is probably more. I know we on the right tend to get a little worried about what we see, and I think you made a great point a while ago, an excellent point, that we're basing our opinions on how the country is swinging by the media, and we shouldn't do that. Because the media is actually not riding in a bus all over this country. They're sitting in seats in New York that are basically paying them money to go out there and trash America, lie, slander, berate, and just twist the news to make it look as bad as they can. And I think sometimes we on the right, we're guilty of biting into that, just like many Americans do, and they shouldn't do that. I think if we was to all get in that bus with you and ride this country, I think we would be optimistically enthused to see how much enthusiasm out there. And I watch, I don't watch Fox all the time, but I do watch sometimes in the mornings when I'm up. And when they go to these little cafes and in these little mom and pop shops, and they go to these smaller cities, and I used to do photography and I used to travel the country, and I've seen the same thing you saw. When you get to talking to the people in these cities, you will find some of the best people in the world live in this country
100%.
right here. And I think that's what I'm taking away from what you're telling us tonight.
I'm telling you, Chris, that traveling the country and actually, there's a whole backstory, maybe another time, of how that even happened. I was going to go to Pennsylvania, on the second time and come home. And from that point on, I spent 15 months traveling the country. And it was because of people, wanting, seeing their reactions, supporting and financial supports, that's very difficult, especially, when you're out doing things, but but the support and you see in their eyes that, when they see hope or you feel that look, it's kind of like leading the charge. All right. They got the leader. I'm not the leader. The motorhome is, right. But when the motorhome leads the charge, people follow,
Are you?
and it gives
Mhm.
them certain comfort.
That's great. Are you going to be back out? You mentioned to me that you're going to be back out on the country soon, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm concentrating somewhat on California because I want to, do that push the best I can and support Hilton. And people say, well, I don't really support. Listen, support Red.
Support
Okay,
Red,
that's
buddy.
what we're at,
Absolutely.
right? Bianco, and that team, they didn't, it didn't go their way. Support Red. We need Red, and it's extremely important, right? And all over the country, it's extremely important that we support Red. So people getting this, well, I don't support, so I'm not going to vote. Okay, then you know what? Then just then don't complain, right? Don't complain. When you get a Harrison office, I mean, I
Come
had a
on.
guy
Come on.
that said, well, I don't like Trump and blah, blah. And I said, well, who would you vote for? And he stood there and looked at me, and he was kind of like dumbfounded. He didn't have an answer. He's like, well, I'm not sure. And I go, well, what are you talking about? You either had Harris or Trump. Well, pick it.
Let me ask you this as I wrap it up tonight. Have you ever seen, me and you're about the same age, I just got to say to Magdalene tonight, I want to thank her. We've had all these young whippersnappers that have made me look bad. Now I got an old guy on my show that looks just as gray-headed as I do. You make me feel more my age tonight, Mike. And I'm saying that with my tongue.
50, isn't it?
I'm saying that with my tongue in my cheek. Magdalene knows I love her to death. She's my goddaughter. But no, you've been a great guest tonight, and we're going to have you back. We're going to get them young whippersnappers back too. We've had some great guests that Magdalene sent us, and we love every one of them. But I do want to ask you, because we are in the same time frame, have you ever seen a time when violence has taken hold of our politics? As you mentioned, the threats and the people, the language, and we see, I know we've had this other situation happen in Philadelphia. An ICE agent killed an illegal. The illegal was trying to ram him with a car. He gets shot. But the media in Philadelphia is going up in smoke tonight, not for the ICE agent whose life was almost taken, but for the illegal that tried to do it. And, I don't think the founding fathers ever envisioned our country descending into such violence and chaos and abysmal lawlessness like we are tonight. And I know it's a spiritual problem, but it's almost on us patriots too. It's not. It is spiritual.
And it's a social problem.
It's a social problem too, which is tied to the spiritual. But have you ever seen this kind of violence in your lifetime? I haven't.
No, it's interesting because a good buddy of mine who would vote for a cardboard box before he would Trump, right? And we have discussions and we can talk, right? And so his name is John. I said, John, and he's 10 years older than I am. I go, John, when did all this start? And he goes, Mike, it started about Clinton and Obama when they really started changing, us against them. Now, when you rewind it, you have the protests of Vietnam War and you have these kind of things, but the hatred for a right is the difference, right? The hatred
That's a good
that
point.
people put up with and condone. That's the difference, right?
That's a good point. And I think that's what scares us all, because the violence is being condoned on the left. And, I haven't had a chance to talk to you. I want you to on about Pritz Plattner, the guy in Maine. Next time I'll get you on, I want to talk to you about some of this, more about the lawlessness and the country. And you will be getting a call from me again, Mike. Trust me on this. I've been so blessed to have you tonight, and I think our audience out there has been grateful. I'm going to just do this. If you'll give me 5 minutes, folks. If you've got a question for Mike, real quick, I'm going to take a few questions. Mike's website's causeforfreedom.us, and if you got anything you'd like to say, please feel free to put it in there. Pat and Deb Dolan said to our question about who they're going to hate, he said they'll just find another Republican to hate. And that's, Mike, that's the truth. That I think that's about the truth of it. I'm going to use your statement that people would rather listen to a cardboard box than McDonald. That was a good one about Trump, that he would vote for a cardboard box. That's a good one.
I mean, it's just craziness. And I have to put this plug in real quick. So, it's like the motorhome. I'm out there in the motorhome. I'm a privateer like you, Chris. And so it takes money to run a podcast. Takes money. It takes money to run. That motorhome costs $5 a mile. that includes fuel maintenance, yada yada,
Right.
to drive that thing. I'm a privateer, and I'm funded primarily by myself, and that's by selling, hats and what little I can. But at the end of the day, that's not what I'm pushing. What I'm pushing is, look, as American people, responsible American people, any age, you need to take responsibility and understand that this is your country, and you need to make decisions that are common sense and make sense, not just because everybody else, you hear it here, you hear it there, the media. You need to be diligent about who you surround yourself around and have like-minded conversations. Because look, it's easy to get lost in the weeds. Well, what about this trial, that trial, all this stuff? Look, what we're after is freedom, right? That's what we're after.
Without a doubt, buddy. Well, listen, it has been a deep pleasure. I told you before, you are now officially McFiles family, and you have been adopted into this group. And I don't know if that's good or bad for you or not, but it's great for us because you've been a great patriot. I'm seeing that in the chat room, and you are, and I appreciate it, Mike. And I got a feeling that we'll see you out there on the road soon and meet you in person. I hope we can one day. And I just want to thank you for me. And without even knowing you tonight, there's just some guests we get on. First interviews are always a little hard because you don't know the person and you're trying to sort of fill them out. But this has been one of those that's just flowed from the beginning. And I've got a feeling that we'll be using and getting you on quite a bit this year next. And it's always good to have new friends on this journey because we are fighting a war. And I think that people like you, I'd like to be in the trench with because I think we're in the trench together fighting for this country. And that's a worthy fight to me. It's a worthy fight. It's always been a worthy fight. And I'm not going to stop until the good Lord says it's enough. And I hope that doesn't come in my lifetime. I hope my end will be my true end. I hope that He doesn't let me stop doing this because I love what I do. And I love folks like you, man. I appreciate you, and I hope you know that, and our audience appreciates you. Any final words, and I'll let you wrap us up, and we'll say goodnight.
So, it's funny because people say, well, why do you do this? Why do you keep doing this? I could be in the beach in Costa Rica. I'd be Big Bear. Listen, there's a line in the sand, okay? And the line in the sand is about our freedom. And so I actually, of all things, before August of 24, if you asked me about anything politics, I'd say, yeah, red, blue, I'm red. I'm voting November 5th. I mean, that was kind of the extent of it. And so I don't get way deep into it because at the end of the day, I don't want to confuse it. There's no confusion about common sense. There's no confusion about you voting for who you want and people not telling you from that perspective what you're going to do. And there's no confusion about people that have ill will toward things they don't understand. And most people, let's just say, that get kind of really crazy, it's because they're scared and they're unhappy. They're unhappy with themselves, so true. And they vent it on everybody else. I mean, we all know this. Look at your friends. Who's unhappy? Then they vent it on you. They vent it on you because they're not happy with themselves.
Well, let's just say that misery loves company, and I would prefer not to have company of misery.
There's no time for it.
No time for it, Mike. We got too much at stake here.
It's showtime.
One quick question that just came in the chat at the end. Chris Davis tonight, he says, do you think America is going to make a good comeback? Do you think we're on life support? I think that we got challenges, but I do believe we have a chance if we'll get our act together and vote right and get people in power like Trump. We may not see another Trump I hope we do, but we may not. We better take advantage of him while we got him. We better fight for this country, get things right for generations to come now, because the only concern I've got for our nation is that should there be tragedy in November and we don't win these midterms, this stuff stops. I mean, the Democrats are going to unleash you-know-what against him, and we have got to get to these polls and vote. But I do believe there is something that is boding well for the Republicans, and if he can maintain that House and Senate, God help the left. That's all I got to say, man. I wouldn't want to be a leftist or a Dem within a million miles of this nation, because I'm telling you something, he's going to set some things in order, and I'm all for it if he does. I'm not upset with that. I'm good with that.
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to a guy at the gym about soccer because I don't know that much about soccer, but back in the day, I guess it was Aztecs or something, when they played, and they played, I guess, a version of soccer, the losing team got their head chopped off. Okay,
Lord of mercy.
So we need to look at, hey, look, we don't want our head chopped off.
No, we don't.
fight the fight, knowing that you may die at the end of that game. Believe me, it's a whole different game. And so just contribute. When I say contribute, time, energy, effort, let your friends know. Don't put up with this nonsense of, well, that's not the right pronoun. Look, you know what? Knock it off. Okay. You're a guy. That's the way it is. Just go home. Right. I mean, we have to take a stand without putting ourselves in danger. And that's where it becomes tricky.
Without a doubt, buddy. Well, listen, man, I'm going to say goodnight to you. Thank you so much.
Right.
And costforfreedom.us is his website. And folks, I do encourage you, go buy a hat from him. I saw his website earlier tonight, and I'm going to do that.
You can donate a gallon of diesel fuel.
Yeah, absolutely. Do what you can to help him tonight. And Mike, it's been a pleasure. I will be in touch with you. I want to thank Magdalene Rose. And
Yes.
as I said, it's good to see a fellow gray-head guy with some fire in his belly, and we're going to see you down the road. And I'm gonna try, when you come east, I'm going to try to meet you, and you'll let me get on that bus, will you? Won't you?
Oh,
and
listen,
we might broadcast live. We might do a McFiles week with Mike Wayans. That would be an awesome week of podcast.
You have no idea what goes on in that motorhome. You have no idea.
No, that's my kind of motorhome. That's good. That's good.
Well, I mean, but it's about
I know.
people seeing the cavalry coming.
Come on, buddy. Come on. Well, the cavalry needs to come tonight, and we better, again, fight for the country. We need a cavalry fighting for the country, and you're part of that. God bless you, friend. I'm going to say goodnight to these folks. Have a good night, Mike.
Thanks.
Mike Wayne, everybody. Put some fire in that house for him. And what a good guy right there. Man, I tell you what, we're not even done. We ain't even got the good stuff yet. That was the warm-up. You realize this? We got Bill Federer getting ready in the bullpen. He's on a pre-recorded interview. So you're getting a double feature, double Sunday, double McDonald's hamburger tonight, and he's coming up here in just a few minutes. I want to just take a few minutes, though, and take a few comments and so forth. Did you enjoy him? Put some fire in that house if you enjoyed him tonight. I sure did. And Taryn, I like that bus, too. He was great, wasn't he? And Magdalene, I know you out there, hon. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. And she is batting 1,000. She is batting 1,000 with these great guests, and I'm so grateful for him, for her tonight, and for Mike. And these are my kind of folks. This is what we. He's a veteran and a patriot, and just so grateful for him. Seeing if there's any comments before we start playing Bill Federer tonight. If you got any questions. Anything you want to say real quick, and then we're going to play Bill's. Bill's interview is about 45 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up tonight. We're not going to be able to get to all the videos. We'll do that tomorrow night as a wrap-up show if we get down to McDonald's South in time for the weekend. Good stuff, wasn't it? That was good stuff. Folks, we need to fight for our country. We need to fight for our country, and I hope you took that away from him. And I was very encouraged tonight. I really was, because Mike is doing something we probably all should do, is go see the country, is get out there and go to these towns and talk to the people and talk to your neighbors, talk to your cities. You'll find that we have much more in common with each other than what the media claims we don't have. I feel that in my bones. I feel like that when we start talking to people and we listen to other opinions, we may not even agree, but we find out that we have one common goal, and that's our country. We have the best for the country in mind. Most people do. Now, there's some that don't. And look, there's going to be the haters and the ones that say F you and, do crazy stuff. I'm surprised he's not had more happen to him with that bus, to be frank with you, because that is a trigger. I mean, those pictures are triggers. And so we need to pray for Mike. We do. We need to pray for his safety. And we made a new friend tonight, and I'm really grateful for him. And Magdalene, I cannot tell you thank you enough for sending him our way tonight. It was great. And we're going to get, Mag did a great job. I think we need to give Magdalene some fire. She did a great job Tuesday night. And we had her and James on, and she did wonderful. Now, as many of you know, we've got a great friend, Bill Federer. So many of you have heard him often, and he is getting ready in the bullpen. And let me just reset this so we can, I don't know what's causing that light to shine like that. But he is coming up here in just a second, and you're going to enjoy this interview. Now, we recorded this interview with Bill on July the 3rd, and that was a couple of days before our 250th anniversary. And so a lot of this, we're talking about the 250 in advance. So when you're listening to this, you're saying, well, it's already taken place. Well, it has. The whole month of July, folks, we're going to have patriots and people just like Mike Wayman and Bill and other patriot-minded people talk about the country. There are some developments in Iran tonight. We'll try to talk about them tonight for a few minutes, but this is going to be it for tonight after Bill, because it's already 10 o'clock, and I don't want to keep you up to midnight. So I want you to enjoy this interview, and I'll come back and say hello to you after this is over with. I hope you'll enjoy this time with Bill Federer tonight. He's the best. Man, we've got some firepower on the McFiles Thursday night show tonight, have we not? To get somebody like Mike Wayman, and then we have Bill Federer here tonight. I tell you, I don't think we could have it any better than this, and so we're grateful for him. I'm sorry for my light being so weird tonight. I don't normally do this, but it's doing it tonight. We never have a boring moment with the technology. You would think after 8 years, McDonald would figure this stuff out, but that's okay. That's what makes it the McFiles. We didn't have a technical problem. We didn't have a sound problem. We didn't have a light problem. You'd think aliens had invaded this show and they were running the show, which some people think that anyway, so that's okay. Listen, be blessed out here. Enjoy this interview with Bill Federer. You're going to love him, and he's on his game tonight now. I'm going to tell you right now, he's on his game. You're going to love this. Put some fire in that house for Mike Wayman again. Enjoy this interview from AmericanMinute.com's Bill Federer. We're going to talk about communism in America and Islam and its threat to our nation. We talked about this on July the 3rd. Enjoy the interview, folks. I'll be back after this to say goodnight to you.
Special.
And a good evening, everybody. Chris McDonald with you on a very special pre-recorded McFiles interview. We are always grateful to have the one and only Bill Federer, AmericanMinute.com. We are wonderfully blessed to have him every time. He is the kind of man that I would sit and listen to for 7 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, but he wouldn't talk that long because he's got a life too, so he wouldn't let me do that. But it's so good to see you, buddy. It's been a while, and we're celebrating our country's 250th anniversary, and I didn't think of anybody better than you to come and talk about the history of our country a little bit. We'll talk about a little bit about the commies and what they're trying to do to take the country from us, but I do want to talk about the history. It's good to see you today. How are you doing?
Well, it's great to be with you, Chris.
Good to be with you. Bill, tell us a little bit about this 250 year, and I've read a lot of history books, and I'm a history person, not as well versed as you, but I am a history person, and I noticed this statement a lot, and I even read it in one of I think it was Washington, that said this American experiment was an ongoing experiment, and I just believe that we're more than that. I think we've pretty much proven that 250 years of history we've sustained some very tough battles to be where we're at today. I'm not saying we've passed every test. I'm not saying we've won every battle, but the country has endured quite a bit to be at this place. And we're sort of on the tipping point of where most empires end, and that is the concerning part of this. But tell us a little bit of how you feel about this and our history and where we're headed going forward.
Yeah, well, the experiment is self-government. So one of the projects that I did is research every century of recorded human history to find out what the most common form of government is. And it was a couple of year-long task, actually, where I went back to the beginning of the invention of writing, Sumerian cuneiform on clay tablets in the Mesopotamian Valley. I don't read cuneiform, but I've read books about it. But it's around 3300 BC is when most archaeologists, etymologists who study the spread of language, and anthropologists, that's when they said that writing was invented. There's a Cosmos TV series episode of Neil deGrasse Tyson in the deserts of Iraq, saying, it was here between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers 5,000 years ago that we learned how to write, we being humanity. So here's a secular scientist saying writing's been around for 5,000 years, from around 3,300 BC. And if you think of it, 5,000 years is not that long. It's just 50 people living 100 years each, or 100 people living 50 years each. But it's not that long. But since we have writing and records, let's read them. What do they show? They show that the most common form of government is kings. Now, they go by different names: Pharaoh, Caesar, Kaiser, Sultan, Tsar, Maharaja, Genghis Khan, Julius Caesar, Attila the Hun. And a king is a glorified gang leader. So in a sense, the default setting for human government is gangs. And so if you think of it, get rid of all the police, be fine for a couple of weeks, and then you'll have gangs that will start robbing, and they'll rob the stores. And once the stores are empty, they'll start going to the nice houses, and then they'll start going through any house, and they'll start rifling through neighborhood by neighborhood. And the most successful gang leader, robber, they're going to make their king. And then we're going to have to organize to defend our neighborhood. And we're going to find somebody with some experience. And we say, hey, you be our captain. And we'll have, in a sense, a good king. And you just multiply that by centuries, right? And they keep getting bigger and bigger with every military advancement. So the first gang leader king in history is Nimrod, Tower of Babel. And the plains of Shinar, just down the mountain from Ararat, where Noah's Ark landed. And Josephus, the Jewish commentator, said Nimrod wanted to build his tower so high that if God destroyed the world again with a flood, he could survive on top. Yeah. And he made everybody in town bake bricks and bring them, or he would kill them. He wanted people to fear his government more than fear God. And so ultimately he could take their life. And since the population of the world is centered there and he wanted to control it, in a sense, Nimrod was the first globalist. He was the first one world government guy, wanting to count and track and keep control of everybody's life. And God comes down and confuses the languages, and the people scatter into language groups that turn into nations. Lo and behold, nations were God's invention to postpone a one world government. Take the population of the world, scatter it into these subgroups, and they'll cancel each other out. But every generation has some king or pharaoh or a sultan that wants to conquer other nations. And if left unchecked, they'd have been happy to keep conquering their whole lives. And so, you look at king of Assyria conquering, and then the kings of Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar, and then the Cyrus of Persia and Darius, and then Alexander the Great, and then Julius Caesar, and then Attila the Hun, and then the Vikings and the Muslims, and they keep getting bigger and bigger with every new military advancement. And so whoever gets the next military advancement first gets a window of time to expand. And whether it's the invention of the stirrup or the invention of the composite bow that the Parthians and the Mongols had, or whether it's the invention of gunpowder or steel. And so these empires grow bigger and bigger. And then you have maritime empires on the ocean until finally the King of England had the biggest empire that planet Earth had ever seen. The King of England was a globalist. The sun never set on the British Empire. He had India, a quarter of the world's population right there, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, British Guyana, Canada, Barbados, Bermuda, Jamaica, countries from Egypt down to South Africa, right? You see this empire growing, and they had America. And America's founders decided they didn't like being part of this global empire with this global dictator on top. And so the America's founders broke away and flipped it and made the people the king. And so America is an experiment of a polarity change in the flow of power. Instead of top down, it's bottom up. And it's the difference between a dead pyramid ruled top down through fear or bottom up. Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he says, the kings of the Gentiles rule over them, but it shall not be so among you. He that's among you, let him be the servant of all. I am among you as he that serveth. So Jesus is talking about his kingdom, and his kingdom is bottom up through love and through service rather than top down through fear. And it's interesting. You look at all the kingdoms of the world, like the devil took Jesus to a high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And he said, bow down and worship me, and all this is yours. For it has been delivered to me, and I can give it to whoever I want. And of course, Jesus said, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. But you think that's pretty audacious of the devil to say all the kingdoms of the world are his? When did he get them? When Adam sinned. Adam was in charge of the garden. We know that because he named everything. Naming something means you have authority over it. But the Bible says, to whomever you yield your members servants to obey, to him you are a servant. The moment Adam obeyed Satan, he was posturing himself as the one receiving the orders, and the devil is the one giving them. And that's when the devil usurped power. And one common denominator in all the kingdoms of the world is they're ruled through fear. The guy at the top can kill people. And where Jesus said, my kingdom is bottomed up through love, through service of other people. And anyway, so America is this experiment of a polarity change in the flow of power. If you like, I can get into where the founders got these ideas.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so Theodore Roosevelt, 1903, said, in no other place and at no other time has the experiment of government of the people, by the people, and for the people been tried on so vast a scale as here in our own country. So this experiment, where did they get ideas? Well, they got some from John Locke's Two Treatises of Government in the Age of Enlightenment. They got some ideas from the Magna Carta, 1215 AD, surrounding King John on the fields of Runnymede and getting him to give up some of his power. They did get some ideas from the Roman Republic, SPQR, Senatus Publicus Romanus, where they had 600 senators representing the Roman people. They did get some ideas from the Athenian democracy, where they had 6,000 citizens. But ultimately, the first instance in world history of millions of people and no king was ancient Israel, around 1400 BC to 1000 BC, when they came out of Egypt, where there was a pharaoh who ruled their lives and made them slaves. And here are these illiterate Israelites, and they suddenly get downloaded on Mount Sinai a form of government that is completely contrary to the rest of the world. With it, so there's no king, and it's empowering the people, because everybody in Israel is taught to read. Israel's the first literate population. Only 1% of Egypt could read. Reading and writing was the scribes' secret knowledge. They had 3,000 hieroglyphs, wow. And they actually kept them complicated on purpose as job security. So only the scribes in the upper class knew what was going on. When Moses comes down the mountain, he has the law in a 22-character alphabet. First letter's Aleph, second letter Beth. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. It's so easy to learn, kids could read. So they could read, and they read the law. And the law says, be nice to your neighbor because you're accountable to God. And so this is a covenant form of government, like a triangle. You get rights from God, you're fair to your neighbor because you're accountable to God. And it worked for 400 years until the Levite priests went woke. They went rainbow church.
True.
Here's Eli, the high priest.
Yes.
His own sons are sleeping with women in the very tent where the Ark of the Covenant is. Another Levite with a silver graven image in the house of a guy named Micah. And you're like, isn't that one of the commandments? You're not supposed to have graven images. And here's a Levite with one. And then there's a Levite with a concubine. The law says the Levite's to marry a virgin of his own tribe. Here he is with the woman he's not even married to. And the poor concubine, the house is surrounded by sodomites. Something about that behavior that appears at the last stages of a people ruling themselves as casting off of self-restraint. And the poor concubine is abused and dies. And by the time you're grossed out by the story, you read this line, every man did that which was right in their own eyes. Why? Because the Levite priests stopped teaching what was right in the Lord's eyes. They went woke. And so why is this story important? Right? So in Israel, the chaos caused the people to go to Samuel the prophet and say, we want a king. So the kings of Europe, the kings of England, looked to the Bible for their authority, but they looked to the King Saul and after. And the Pilgrims and Puritans that founded New England looked to the before King Saul part of the Bible. Both of them are looking to the Bible. One's looking to the King Saul and after, divine right of kings. I'm like Saul. I'm the royal anointed, gang leader. And the Pilgrims and Puritans look to the before King Saul part of the Bible, this covenant form of government. And of course, the word federal is Latin for covenant, where it's we the people, government from the consent of the governed. And anyway, I could get into that. There's a book I wrote called Who is the King in America?
Great book.
Another one is called The Silence Equals Consent, the Sin of Omission. And I go through how in New England, you literally had churches founding cities. So Providence, Rhode Island was founded by the First Baptist Church. Hartford, Connecticut was founded by the First Congregational Church. So all the church members are involved in city politics because it's the church founding the city. And so that's the founding of America. And what? So this idea of people ruling themselves bottom up came from the church, came from this congregational church government, not from the hierarchical church government with bishops and so forth, but a bottom up. And they got their idea from ancient Israel, that first 400 years out of Egypt. And so that's a nutshell in explaining this experiment of people ruling themselves without a king. And they tried it in other areas. For example, there were some Swiss cantons that ruled themselves without a king, but then Napoleon comes through and conquers them. There's some, the Greek city-states until Alexander the Great conquers them. There's some German mercantile cities along the North Sea until Otto von Bismarck, unites all of Germany. And so when people rule themselves, they usually get prosperous, but then they become a target of attack. And then you had Novgorod, which was a Russian republic where they elected their own leaders, but then Ivan the Terrible comes and kills 60,000 of them and sends in his secret police and burns all the fields around the city walls. And so when people rule themselves, they become prosperous and then they become a target of attack. Or in Rome's case, they kept getting bigger and bigger until they got top heavy. And the Romans had a position that was a 1-year dictator. The term was dictator, but it was a 1-year emergency term. There was this case during the Roman Republic where they were being attacked, and they got this gentleman that was a farmer named Cincinnatus, and he was a good fighter and organizer. And he leaves his farm and he organizes Rome. They fight, they win, and he goes back to his farm. Happens again when he's 80 years old. He leaves his farm again, organizes, they fight, they win, he goes back to his farm. But this term, and that's where the founders in America formed the Order of Cincinnatus. It was noble to be in leadership and then give up the power. That's, of course, where Cincinnati, Ohio gets the name from.
So I thought.
But it was at 1 year. Well, Julius Caesar decides he's going to make himself dictator for life. And that's when the Roman Republic flips and becomes a Roman Empire. So people ruling themselves, they either become successful and a target of attack, or they become successful and they get so big they get top heavy, and then you have somebody usurping power. I sort of went down a historical rabbit trail, but
that's perfect. And I do want to ask you a question. Where is America right now? Are we top heavy, or are we behaving ourselves right? Because it seems to me, and I want you to speak to that a little bit, because it seems that conservatives in general, not all of them, but conservatives in general are fighting for us to be a republic where it's we the people controlling the government. But somehow, Bill, along this road, the we the people stuff, we have outsourced our power to the government, and the government now is not wanting to give that power back. And there's this internal fight, it seems, over our nation. It's spiritual warfare to me, of forces that want the government to rule everything: our life, our faith, our families, our choices, our pocketbooks. And then you've got another group of people that are rebelling against that. It's almost like we're playing the Revolutionary War over again. We don't want government in our life. We want to be free of that. And in answering that question, I want you to answer me this too, if you don't mind. We're 250 years old. All those empires that you mentioned, is there any truth? Because I hear this often that around 250, 300 years is about the average length of these empires. Other than the Byzantine, I understand that was about 1100 years. Are we in America on borrowed time here if we don't get this right? Is this sort of the apex where we're at? Do you think we've got another 250 years in us if we do this right? What's your thoughts on all that? That's
Yeah,
what
well, you bring up some really good points. The J.D. Unwin is a was a anthropologist in Britain, and he wrote a book in 1934 called Sex and Culture. And he observed 80 major civilizations over 5,000 years of history, and he observed trends. And one of the trends he saw was that promiscuity precedes collapse of a civilization. So he says civilizations go through four stages. The first is a period of pain and poverty. They go through a terrible situation, whether it's slavery like the Jews, and then they make it through and they work really hard and they get productive. And then they work together and they become patriotic. And then they end up becoming prosperous.
Hmm.
And then they want to enjoy their prosperity and they get promiscuous and
Right.
they get indulgent and lazy. Sort of like an athlete. When he's young, he's focused, disciplined, watches his diet, exercises. He wants that championship really bad. And then finally, after a lot of competition, he wins and he is the champ for a couple seasons until he gets he wants to enjoy himself and he eats a little fatty foods and maybe skips exercising and gets a little pot belly. And in his mind, he still thinks he's the champ. But then he gets called into the ring of competition and some young buck knocks the tar out of him, right? And so civilizations go through life cycles. And so J.D. Unwin even called it a sexual marketplace. He says when a society as a whole, when women have standards and they insist on a commitment, then the men get married and work hard to provide for their wives. And then something happens, little kids appear, and the guy has another emotion, being protective. And when the majority of the men in the country are productive and protective of their wives and families, the whole country gets productive and protective and expansionistic and creative and innovative and even militaristic. But when the women as a group say there does not need to be a commitment, water seeks its own level. You'll have a bunch of guys getting pleasure focused and lazy and indulgent and selfish, and there's fewer kids born, and the ones that are born don't have fathers in the home, and they're irresponsible. And when enough of the men of the country act this way, the country gets weakened. And they get conquered by the next rising civilization that's at that height stage, right? That their young champion competition stage. And J.D. Unwin said it's irreversible. Once a nation gives in to sexual promiscuity, human nature wants that. And it's hard to put the horses back in the barn. It's hard to put the water back when the dike is broken, right? Once the society has given way to sexual immorality, it's really hard to rein it back in. Now, we're faced with a challenge. Most of the civilizations he observed were pre-Christian. And even ancient Israel, their experiment of ruling themselves without a king lasted 400 years until they started giving into sexual promiscuity.
Very true.
God even tells, in the law, he says, okay, when you get a king, don't multiply gold, don't go to Egypt for horses, and don't multiply wives. So what did Solomon do? He multiplied gold and sent to Egypt to get horses, and he had 1,000 wives.
Yes, he
and
did.
They pulled his heart away from God, and he's building pagan temples, and it was a sexual immorality that pulled Solomon, and God was very mad at Solomon. And he said, I am going to pull the kingdom away from you, but I'm not going to do it from you because I promised David, but I'll rip it from your son. And so now we have in Western civilization, we have things called revivals. And when a revival is successful and gets applied to society, it becomes a reformation. And it's almost like gravity is pulling a satellite down to the Earth where it'll eventually crash. But if the satellite can have some booster rockets and it shoots it back up into the atmosphere, it can stay in orbit for several more years. And so a revival that turns into a reformation and reforms society, it's like buying time. It shoots the satellite back up, and then it's the next generation's turn to see if they can keep it up there. But if they don't, the satellite will come crashing and burning down to Earth, and the life cycle of that civilization will end. Now, I thank God for a president who's not a globalist, but
Yeah.
there is a push for globalism. And if America was not here, what would happen? The world would be a gang war between the most powerful gang leaders, a gang leader in Russia, a gang leader in China, a gang leader in North Korea, a gang leader in Iran, right? It'd
So
be
true.
pardon?
It's so true. No, I mean interrupt you.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, and so America is holding back a one world government, and Trump is keeping America in this position of holding back a one world government. And so it's up to us. If we lose the midterms, and the Democrats get control of Congress, and they begin impeachment of Trump, they'll not only go after him and all of his cabinet, they'll go after all the Republicans, and it'll work its way down till they're going after pro-life Catholics and moms that speak out at school board meetings because they don't want their kid transitioned without their knowledge. I mean, it'll go down to every one of us. And so what we're experiencing under Trump is a very rare, I liken it to Josiah, excuse me. Ancient Israel had a wicked king named Manasseh, and he's sacrificing kids to Moloch. Maybe like some previous presidents pushing abortion and pushing trans and pushing all this other kind of stuff. And God sends prophets to Manasseh, and they tell him that God is finally fed up and Judah is history. It is over. The prophets say, you're sacrificing kids to Moloch. You're doing the same thing that the people that were here before Israel came in were doing. And because they were doing it and God gave them 400 years to repent and they didn't, God brought Israel in to judge them. And now because you're doing it, I'm going to judge you and drive you out. So the prophets of God prophesied judgment. But then Manasseh's grandson, Josiah, 8 years old, becomes king. Teenager, he starts to seek the Lord. Early 20s, he tells him to clean out the temple that his granddad Manasseh had trashed. And the priests find the law of God. One of the commentaries says that it was the original one Moses had wrapped in burlap, buried under a bunch of stuff in the storage room, and they pull it out. The priests read it and says, oh, the king needs to hear this. And they read it to the king, and this young king rips his garments and repents. And he sends messengers to a prophetess in town named Huldah, the wife of the king's tailor. Here's a godly woman who hears from the Lord, and she says to the messengers, tell the man that sent you that judgment's coming, but not during his lifetime, because he repented when he heard the words of the Lord. And so God put off the judgment. Josiah had a huge Passover. It says it was the biggest one ever. And he sends out the Levites to teach the law. And they build platforms and they preach. And during that revival is when Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were young boys and got turned on to the Lord. And they tore down Sodomite temples. And so there's this revival going on, and it lasts for the entire 31-year reign of Josiah. So I am praying for a Josiah generation, right? We think of all the babies that we've murdered. God is a just God. There's nothing more unjust than killing an innocent person. And there's nobody more innocent than a little baby who's not done anything wrong, yet you're giving them the ultimate judgment, the death sentence. It's like, if God is silent, he's giving his approval to that. And if he gives his approval to that, he's no longer a just God. He denies himself. So to ask God not to judge a nation that's killing innocent babies, you're asking him to deny his just nature. And that the gospel is God has Jesus take the judgment in our place. That's why Jesus is so important, right? God judged Jesus in our place so he doesn't judge us. But as a nation, there's a quote from George Mason, one of the founding fathers from Virginia. He said, as nations cannot be rewarded or punished in the next world, they must be in this. By an inevitable chain of consequences and events, God punishes national sins with national calamities. And so let's look at Deuteronomy 28, blessings and cursings. If you hearken to the voice of the Lord, your nation will be blessed coming in, blessed coming out. But if a nation does not hearken to the voice of the Lord, it'll be a debtor. Well, America is the most in-debt nation in world history with $39 trillion worth of debt. But the judgment goes on, and it says, the stranger will come in amongst you and rise up above you, and they will be the head, and you'll be the tail. They'll be above, and you'll be beneath. They'll lend to you, and you'll have to borrow. They'll go into Minnesota and set up fraudulent things, and you'll have to pay millions of dollars for them to freeload, right?
Pretty much.
And so dead and dying things devour. A dead bird attracts ants. A dead dog will attract buzzards. A dead fish will attract little microbes. And a spiritually dying nation is going to attract judgment. And so what happened with ancient Israel when they sinned? Well, God let the Amalekites come in, and the Edomites, and all the different ites, right? And the termites and mosquito bites, all the ites. And they were judged. And then they repented, and then God raised up a deliverer, and then they drove out the enemy, and then they went for another generation until the next generation backslid. And 13 times in the book of Judges, this cycle happened. And so we're somewhere on that cycle in America.
I see that. Let me ask you this. We'll keep another 10 minutes or so, 15, but max. But I want to ask you about the what you just described is where we're at. This push, and me and you both have seen it, just this last round of primaries in the nation over the last month. Bill, we've seen some radical. I mean, we're not even talking just crazy dim stuff, but we're talking people that have got an ideology that is completely opposite of godliness in this nation. Communism is godless. I hope people understand that tonight. It is a godless theology. It's never been blessed by God. It's never worked. Socialism has never worked. But you mentioned the foreigner. Has it been your opinion that these foreign-born people that have gotten in power and we've let them in the door? Because if you look at the main problems that's going on in Congress, these judges, even within the banking system and all these people that are causing the most ruckus, these candidates that are wanting to take power, they've got one thing in common. They're the stranger. They're all foreign-born, and they've taken us over from inside, and it just echoes of what Brezhnev said back in the 60s. He said, you all are not going to have a shot. We're not going to have to fire a shot to destroy your nation. We're going to do it from within. And Abraham Lincoln even said it. He said, if we fail, we'll fail because this experiment will die from within, not from without. But we are seeing that in 2026 in real time. And I have to tell you, my friend, we don't walk in fear. We walk in faith. But just as a citizen and seeing this, even as a parent, a grandparent, a husband, a believer, it should trouble us that we're in these times. Jesus is coming, yes, but we're still here, and we've got to live in this, and we've got to face this and resist it and pray against it, because this is a sinister force that is trying to take this beautiful nation of America down into a place it will never come back from, I believe, if we go.
Yeah, well, you're right. The Soviet Union, there's a quote from, I think, Khrushchev. And he says, "We will take."
Khrushchev, yeah.
He said, "We will take America without firing a shot. We do not have to invade the U.S. We will destroy you from within." That's actually a strategy called the Cloward-Piven strategy. The socialists in Germany got driven out to Columbia University in New York, and then they brought their socialism with them. But I wrote a book on the history of socialism, how it's a bait and switch for dictatorship. I actually dedicated it to Charlie Kirk. I did several interviews with Charlie on it, and he been on his show a dozen times, and he would text me all kinds of questions and on history, and I'd text him answers. And anyway, so America is where people have freedoms. Well, how do you get people to give up their freedom? There's two ways: fear and free stuff. If you get people into fear, they'll panic and trade their freedom for security. And there is a whole line of history that I go through of how the government intentionally, in wanting to turn it into socialism, they'll intentionally create crises to get people to panic, so they'll give up their freedoms. Machiavelli, Hegel, Karl Marx, so forth. But then the free stuff is interesting. This is the Cloward-Piven strategy. This is Richard Cloward, Francis Piven, Columbia University, New York. They said, you'll never conquer America with tanks. So you have to rot it from within. You have to destabilize the economy, get the economy in debt. So there's inflation. And then people will lose their jobs and they will come to the government and say, help. And the government says, we will give you help, but it's in exchange for your freedom. And they create a dependency, and you backdoor the population into being dependent and controlled by the government. And so this influenced Lyndon Johnson's Great Society welfare state, where he pushed getting as many inner city people to lose their jobs and sign up for welfare, and then they become permanent Democrat voters. And they'll vote for candidates that'll give them more free stuff. And it's this cycle that they want. And then Lyndon Johnson changed the immigration quotas to bring in fewer people from countries that are similar to the United States, European countries and so forth, where they have a Judeo-Christian work ethic. And he brings in more people from poorer countries where they are so poor, they're happy to take a handout. And once they do, they get in the habit of it. And I talked to this one really sharp lady, this is an attorney out in California, and she said, yeah, my family came over, the boats, back in the 70s, as refugees. And she said, my parents signed up for welfare. And she said, it's been years, and I keep trying to get them to get off of welfare, but they're afraid to. I'm like, you've been here, they've been here for decades, and they get free money, and they're afraid to get off. So they'll vote for candidates they promise to keep the free money coming. And here she is. She's a hardworking attorney, right? But once you get people to receive free money, you can count on their vote. And so this was a way to build a Democrat voter base. And so you look at Mondami in New York. The strategy of the Democrats is to have crime go up in big cities on purpose. Have the judges continue to let the criminals out. Why do they do that? They want crime to go up. Why? Because then pro-family people leave. And pro-family people are a higher percentage Republican. And then pro-small business people will leave. Right? The taxes are so high. The police are being ordered to stand down. There's crime in the streets. Who wants to go shopping? And so pro-business people are a higher percentage Republican. Who's left in the city? More people on welfare. They're a higher percentage Democrat. So if crime goes up, the Democrats get a monopoly on city politics. And whoever wins the big city ends up winning the entire state. And whoever wins the state gets all the electoral votes for the state, and the president's elected by electoral votes. They literally have a political strategy that starts off with having crime go up in the big cities on purpose. And they even will find a nice area that's suburban, and they'll say, we want to put in a high-density, low-income housing right smack dab in the middle of it. Why? Because then we can bring in more poor people, and then we can have Section 8 housing, and then we can have more crime, and then that will cause people to move out, and we'll take over. It's a repeatable strategy. And interestingly enough, it is the same strategy Muhammad had. So people forget Muhammad was a religious leader in Mecca. He gets confrontational. They chase him out of town. He goes north to a Jewish city called Medina. And the Jews are nice and let him in as the first ever Muslim immigrant. He goes into the minority neighborhoods and he begins to get a following, sort of like a community organizer. And when his following gets big enough, he pressures the Jews to a treaty. And then when Muhammad's followers get chased out of Mecca, he allows them to rob the caravans headed back, and they become militant. And he gets verses from his Allah that he gets a fifth of the booty from robbing caravans. And so after he defeats the Meccans, he goes back into the Jewish city and gets offended at one of the Jewish clans, confiscates their property, chases them out. The other two stand down because they didn't ever like that other party. Now there's two Jewish clans. Muhammad gets offended at the smaller of the two, confiscates their property, chases them out, and the big Jewish clan has Trump derangements in them. It's like, oh, I hated that tribe for centuries. I'm so glad they're gone. They deserve it. They had it coming to them. Now there's only one Jewish tribe, and Muhammad surrounds them for 25 days, brings them into the market, chops off their heads. So within 5 years of Muhammad coming into the Jewish city of Medina, there's not a Jew left in the city of Medina. So when Mandami gave a speech in February of this year, and said, my religion began with Muhammad being an immigrant into Medina. And it's like, yeah, and what happened next? And then he drove out all the previous inhabitants of Medina and took over. So this is an Islamic strategy. You come in to a host country as a religious refugee. You increase the number of your followers amongst the minorities and get involved in politics. And then you have random outbreaks of violence, random knifings and random acid attacks and rapes and violence. And the previous inhabitants of the neighborhood says, my neighborhood's changed. We got to move out. And then the Muslims take over the neighborhood. So the Islamic strategy overlaps the Democrat strategy. And their goal is if they can have crime go up and they can win the big cities, they win the entire state. And if they want to do voter fraud, there's fewer people of the other party in the city to be able to look over their shoulders. And if they win enough states, they get enough electoral votes to vote in the president. And so, anyway.
What you just described is America 2026. And we have been invaded, my friend. I didn't mean to interrupt the train of thought there, but we've been invaded, have we not?
Yeah, definitely. And you have globalists. I was just reading about this one gentleman, Singham, if I'm pronouncing it right. He is a Neville Roy Singham, and he resides in China.
Yes.
And he is a billionaire, and he's pumping money into all the Marxist causes in America. So, all those young people waving flags from the river to the sea and the Gaza stuff, he organized and paid for all those. The anti-Trump No Kings protests, he was involved in funding those. You think these are, they make the news and these are just young people. No, they're useful idiot kids that are just doing what somebody that's organizing it tells them to do. And I love the man on the street interviews where they'll stick a mic in one of these kids' faces, like, why are you here? I don't know. Somebody sent me a text,
True. My friend, what you've described is it's like the headlines off of today. And one other quick thing about Mandami, you mentioned to me before the show started, the businesses, because I've heard Hannity, the talk show host on Vox, he left New York, and there's a lot of businesses fleeing. And you said that that's actually by design too. It's not just the crime for families to leave, but they want the businesses to leave too. And is that right? Is that sort of a communist strategy as well?
Yeah, and not just from cities, from states. So in
States.
California, they
true.
intentionally want the taxes to go up in California. They intentionally want to make it hostile to business. Why? Because then pro-business people leave the state, and then they replace them with people from other countries. And California is so big, I think they have 55 congressmen. And if that's a significant amount that can flip the U.S. Congress.
Without a doubt.
And
Without a doubt.
so we have any, going back to the beginning, any person following their selfish fallen nature potentially could be the Antichrist. You think what? Yeah. Anybody that if you had power, you would be tempted to favor your family and friends and weaponize the government against your political enemies. And you just multiply that by time and money and power, and you've got yourself somebody that wants a global government, and they want to be at the top. So in that sense, death is a blessing, because any one of the Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, Napoleon, any one of them would have been happy to keep conquering if they hadn't have been, died off. And so in that sense, death is a blessing, and the devil has to start from scratch, but he has the latest military and technological advancements to pick up where he left off. You look at the threads, you have Cain killing Abel. And Cain, if you analyze him, he was religious. He wanted to worship God, but he did it through his works. And we know it's works because God told Adam, the ground is cursed for your sake, and you'll bring forth fruit by the sweat of your brow. Sweat is work. Cain is sweating. He's trying to work his way to heaven. If you do works, you can be proud of your works because you're doing more than your brother. And Islam is a religion of pride. And they call it honor, but it's pride. And when Cain's works were rejected, it says his countenance fell. He was embarrassed. He was shamed in front of his community, his ummah. And he decided he was going to do the first honor killing and kill his brother Abel, who's responsible for embarrassing him in front of his community. And now any religion of works is the religion of Cain, but Islam is, in a way, more so. And Abel trusted in the Lamb. And God is on one side, and he is just. And we're on the other side, and we are sinners, and the Lamb is in between. And the Lamb takes the judgment for our sins instead of us taking the judgment for the sins. And so it's humbling, because if you're trusting in the Lamb, this third party, you're implicitly acknowledging you are insufficient in yourself. It's humbling.
That's right.
And so the says in the beginning, around Genesis chapter 5 or 6 says, and then men began to call upon the name of the Lord. It's like, what is that all about? What are you calling? You're calling help. You wouldn't call unless you needed help. And so it's humbling to ask for help. And so Cain was the religion of pride, and Abel's was the religion of being humble and trusting in the Lamb. So it's almost like the spiritual descendants of Cain are always trying to kill the spiritual descendants of Abel.
It's always been a war, Bill. It's always been a spiritual war. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to wrap us up here. All this has been great. And, you've sort of confirmed for me, and your books, I want to just say your website is one of the best. If anybody wants to check it out. I've put 6 of Bill's kids through college with the amount of money I've spent on that website. I'm just saying. But I do want you to give us a final thought about America and your thoughts as we celebrate 250 years. I'm proud of our nation. Look, I know we've got some serious problems, but I will tell you this. When George Washington made the statement, this has been a good experiment. I love what you said a while ago. Without America in this world, we would have a wasteland of gang members, and there would be utter, absolute chaos, anarchy, and lawlessness. God has used this nation to keep that at bay. And I tell you something else he's done. He's used us to protect this tiny little nation that's in this flag behind me, and that's Israel. And those purposes, when they go away, are salt, as Jesus said, when the salt becomes no longer good, it's just thrown into a dunghill. I just pray that we see the light of that and we don't lose our salt, because that's why we're here. And we've got to continue to do that and resist this lawlessness. We very well can't resist it globally if it's going on within us. And I'll let you wrap us up on that.
Reagan said, in this country of ours took place the greatest revolution that has ever taken place in the world's history. Every other revolution simply exchanged one set of rulers for another. Here, for the first time in all the thousands of years of man's relation to man, the founding fathers established the idea that you and I had within ourselves the God-given right and ability to determine our own destiny. Our founders, for all their faults, gave you a present, and that present is you get to be in charge of your life. You get to decide where you want to live, who you want to marry, what career you want to pursue, right? What to eat, what clothes to wear. And And so then you get to be the king with a little k of your life. And then all of us together are king with a little k over the country. And we have the voluntary opportunity of surrendering our lives to Jesus, the King of Kings. But it's voluntary. It's not a king in England burning you at the stake or canceling you if you don't believe what the government tells you to believe. No, our founders, like William Penn, said, force makes hypocrites. 'Tis persuasion only that makes converts.
Beautiful.
God loves you. He wants you to love him back. But for love to be loved, it must be voluntary.
Yes, it
With
is.
freedom of conscience freely given. And so that's why they put freedom of conscience in there. I was reading Wisconsin's Constitution, and it says that all men have a right of worshiping Almighty God according to the dictates of their conscience. And I thought, let's analyze that. It's Almighty God singular. So we've just removed Buddhism and Hinduism. And it's Almighty God. You have the right to worship according to the dictates of your conscience. There's no Islamic country that allows you freedom of conscience. No, it's Sharia. It's you worship God according to the Quran. You don't have the freedom of conscience. If you leave it, it's called the Ridda laws, RIDDA. If you leave Islam, you get killed.
Pretty much.
And so just by saying you have the freedom to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of your conscience, it's a Christian principle, Judeo-Christian Bible principle.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's the difference in us and Islam. But it's been such a pleasure. I just cannot tell you how much we just appreciate, love you, and just thank you for your wisdom. As I said, I can sit and listen to you for 3 hours. I know we get comments from people when you come on and they tell me the same thing. And we're going to get you back on next month or the month after, whenever we can get with you. I know you got a busy schedule. We pray you're safe. Happy 4th of July. And thank you so much. And AmericanMinute.com, correct, is your website.
Yes.
Got it right. And I encourage people, folks, seriously, all these books Bill talked about, this book on socialism, tremendous. Silence,
Silence equals consent.
Silence equals consent. The King, Who is the King? It's an excellent read. It's actually on Amazon too, on the, not the Kindle, but the audio book, because I've listened to it in the car. It's good, just as good listening to it as it is reading it. But seriously, I encourage you to go help this ministry. This is a ministry. Bill is going all over the country sharing these ideas. And I think it's a warning to all of us where we're facing folks. And he just described it very beautifully tonight. And we will appreciate him being back soon. Bill, thank you so much. Folks, give us a few minutes. We'll be right back after this. And we thank Bill Federer, AmericanMinute.com. Bill, thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Chris.
And what a night. What a great double feature tonight on the McFiles. We are grateful for both Bill Federer and Mr. Mike Wayman. We're grateful for each one of these gentlemen tonight. Such a precious pair of men. Good patriots. They're just patriots. And they had a lot to say tonight, and I'm grateful for each one in their own way. Bill was on his game. I know it was a lot to digest. I know if you're not in the history, a lot of it may have seemed, monotonous. I didn't think it's monotonous, but I know that some people, I noticed some folks left during the interview, and I wish they wouldn't have, because what they were hearing, folks, you were hearing a warning shot that everything that's happening on this left wing of the country tonight is on purpose. I've always said this. I know we think these people are crazy and they're nuts, and we tend to believe that, I can't believe they're doing this insane stuff. Well, I think if we can come to grips with the fact this is not people that don't know what they're doing. They're very aware of what they're doing. Mandami's knowing what he's doing, chasing these businesses out. Hochul's knows what they're doing. And it's a pattern for the nation, because of the Republicans and the conservatives. I say more conservatives than Republicans. The Republicans are just as vile as the Democrats to me, but we have to vote for them, because even though they've got issues, they're not as insane as the Dems. At least some of them are not. But I'm talking about conservative versus liberal, and their goal is to get us to just lay down and not do anything, not fight. We can't afford to do that. We just can't afford to do that. We got to vote. We got to keep voting, keep praying, and keep pressing on, and stand up for what we know is right. speak up for what we know is right, and face this threat and take it seriously, because these people are trying to take over our country. They are. But there was some really good nuggets in this, and I encourage, if you didn't get all of them on the first try, go back and re-listen to it. And I'll be listening to it again tomorrow, because there was a lot of things Bill said tonight. Even when I sit here and listen, when you're interviewing them, you tend to, I'm watching the sound and making sure everything's right. I sit here with you. I'm listening to some of this too again, and it was really good stuff. It was tremendous, and I'm sure that you enjoyed it tonight. Put some fire in that house for him if you enjoyed it. So amazing. I learned a lot too, John. I learned a lot too. Dennis Floyd, you asked the question tonight. You say, is there any possible way to split California into 2 states? 55 is way too much. Dennis, it's never going to happen. There's been pushes for that before. We've actually talked to Lori Mills, who will be with us the 20th of July. She's coming back. She's been sick, and we're grateful that Lori's going to be with us a week from this coming Monday night. That's not going to happen. As much as I agree with you, it would take a constitutional amendment, and it would, in this Senate and the way the House and the Senate set up, it would never pass. I'll agree with you that 55 is too much for one state. That's basically, because right now, the way things are until they get this cheating, and I think Mike made a great point, even with the suburban areas of Sacramento, San Francisco, LA, and San Diego, if you just got rid of the cheating, if we just had a straight up election with no fraud and none of these shenanigans that the California people do, folks, I firmly believe Spencer Pratt won that mayor's race. And this crap about these ballots being counted weeks after the time, and what they do on election night, they see how many ballots they need. And this is what they do. They start sending these mail-in ballots in to the exact number to overtake the person they don't want to see win. It's ridiculous. It's illegal. Something's got to be done to stop it. If it's not stopped, this will continue. I don't blame it all on that, because if the Republicans would get out and vote like we should, as you heard Mike also say, it would be too big to rig. And it happened in Virginia with Glenn Youngkin. When Glenn Youngkin was voted in as governor, they couldn't cheat in Virginia. How the Virginians went from Glenn Youngkin 4 years, had a black Republican conservative woman, and we're always being screamed at by the Democrats that the Republicans are sexist, racist, homophobic, Islamophobic. But, we are not about women, and we had a black, that we're a bunch of racist rednecks. Well, you had a black female conservative that was running against this white liberal, and I saw Cleo post that in the chat earlier tonight. She's absolutely right, folks. These white liberal women, they have got such a spirit of Jezebel on them, and you have to have an Ahab. Jezebel has to have an Ahab to be able to function. And because conservative men, and sadly many conservative women, don't go to the polls and vote, then Jezebel gets to rule over Virginia. And that's what you've got with Spangenberger, whatever her name is. You would have thought that Winnie Sears would have been a shoo-in among conservatives, but she wasn't. And the same thing is going on in California. I've been told by Rachel Hamm, I've been told by Lori Mills, I've been told by other people, even Ricky, that the Republican establishment in California, folks, is half Democrat. And but I do believe Spencer Pratt won. To answer your question about the 55 representation, what I was trying to say before I got sidetracked, and I do that often, it's a shame that when we open our elections in November, every time we have a presidential election, you can pretty much put 55 electoral votes in the hands of the Democrats, because that's an automatic in California. New York is about the same, and between New York and California, you got almost a third of what they need to win. That's just not right. And I'm with you. I agree with your your statement. It is too much for one state to have a say in the nation. It just is. But I think there's been efforts in the past to do that, and they have failed miserably. I think you'd have to put a referendum. I'd have to check into that. I think that the California people would want it. I think that one year, and I can't remember what year it was, I think Bush Jr. was in office. It came as close to passing as it ever had during the Bush years, but it failed. And it would have to be something the state would have to vote on, and then it would probably every legal left-wing loon bomb would sue to make sure that it didn't get put in force, and you'd have these liberal judges, probably throw it out. So it's a tough road to climb. Your question, though, and your statement is absolutely correct. I agree with you. I do. It's just getting something done about it. I don't think it would happen. And I will give you this, Dennis, your statement too, that legal citizens should be required to vote in order to draw any kind of government benefits. Boy, I bet you that would be peachy. Boy, Dennis is full. He's 2 for 2 tonight. I totally agree with that too. Totally agree with that. I think I would be willing to break even, Dennis, if they could just show a driver's license and show a true ID, not one they've gotten from a bartender that specializes in fake IDs. Sorry. We this country, we have just gotten into a mess. We allow this stuff to happen, folks. I'll say it again tonight. We allow this stuff to happen. We don't need to allow it to happen. Some of this stuff is just, to Southerners, it's not complicated. Just make people show an ID to vote. By the way, there was a federal judge that struck down the Trinidad Tobago judge's ruling about the ID. Trump can force that now in November. And I'm sure that somebody else is going to try to step in and stop it. But if it goes to the Supreme Court, I just don't see the Supreme Court siding with the left. That judge in the case needs to be impeached. The Trinidad judge needs to be removed from the bench. She's not a natural-born citizen. And I think that would go a long way too, Dennis, is getting all these people from foreign countries that are holding power pass a law that says, you're not eligible to run for office and you need to step down. There's rumblings tonight that John Thune is writing his own version of the Save America Act, and it's probably going to be laced with a bunch of left-wing goodies, and it's going to be a watered-down version of what Trump wants. And I'm so flustered and flabbergasted that there are not 5 Republicans. That's all it takes is 5 that can call for his ouster. Where are they? Where are they tonight? You've got Mitch McConnell, and there is rumblings all over the place that some people say he's in rehab, that he's going to take time to recover. Thune and Barrasso claim they talked to him this week. Then you got Laura Loomer basically saying as good as he's brain dead. Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky tonight, has written the Mitch McConnell campaign a letter, his office, I should say, and said, Mitch, you need to prove to us that you're not brain dead. Good luck with that. The weird thing is his wife. When they found him unconscious, evidently, in their office or wherever they found him unconscious on June the 14th, she took off for China and she hadn't been seen since. That's like a 20 out of a scale of 1 to 10 on the weirdometer. I'm just saying. I mean, as Miller says, you can't make this stuff up. And you can't make this stuff up. But these things, Dennis, I'll agree. I think that we need to tighten the ship with our voting. If we tighten the ship with the voting, we see different results. I'm praying that Mike Wayman is right about Hilton. I would love to see Steve Hilton as governor. Ricky, I've talked to her. She loves Steve Hilton to this. She knew Hilton 10 years ago. And Lori Mills told me the same thing, that he's been prepping for this for a while. And California's got the best shot they've had in decades to change course. And I pray they take it. But they're going to have to get the fraud out of the voting. They got to get these these fraudsters out, and there's got to be enough votes that it don't matter. They can't. They've got to make it to where they can't produce enough fake ballots. That they're not going to have time to do it. And I think that I hope the Supreme Court will revisit the law again. And you heard Ricky say it Monday night. I mean, she's got a postage meter in her office. You can make that postage meter put any date on it that you want to and postmark it. You just can. You could send a letter out a week after Election Day and postmark it Election Day and send it out. And according to the Supreme Court now, you can count that. That's got to stop. That's got to stop. And I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Anyway, good to see everybody tonight. And if you got any other statements, Stephen, they've been saying he's actually dead for several nights. It's not just tonight. There's no proof of that. There's no proof of that. I mean, we reported it last night. That's what's being said, but we just can't prove it, and I don't want to go out on that limb. I will say Laura Loomer believes it. David Harris believes it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in this audience who believe it tonight. The only people that know this about this right now is God and Mitch. Probably Elaine Chu knows it, his wife too. But when it comes down to it, just Mitch and God himself are the only two. And I shouldn't be laughing about it, folks. It's not funny that Mitch McConnell could be brain dead. What I'm laughing about is the fact that this is how messed up our politics have gotten. This is how messed up. And let me tell you this. This is how the swamp and the elites are so scared of this. And I'll tell you why. August the 3rd, if it is proven that he is dead before August 3rd, they got to have a special election to replace him in Kentucky. And it will be a Republican. And it probably likely will not be a swamp Republican. Hopefully and prayerfully, the people will put somebody in there that will vote with Trump. Well, that would be peachy. And between him and Massey, Kentucky, what are you thinking about? I mean, what are you Kentuckians thinking about? And, we've had guests here recently that was extolling Thomas Massey. I've got nothing but disrespect and nothing but complete contempt for both him and Mitch. And this crazy idea that Thomas Massey had America's best interest at heart, trying to get the Epstein files released. Folks, give me a break. Give me a break. He's a worse anti-Semite than Stu Peters. I got no respect. I got no respect for Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, even if, let's just throw the brain dead stuff out. He is in such a state, though. It's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Cleo said it last night. Ruth Bader Ginsburg did this to the country. She was not able to carry on her functions, but these elites and these swamp creatures, they stay in power even up to their deathbed, trying to hold on to power. That's demagoguery. That's demonic. Mitch McConnell, if he had any sort of character, which he does not, which his wife doesn't have, he would have resigned 3 weeks ago, when he finally realized, hey, I can't function. He would step down. Dianne Feinstein would have stepped down. And we Republicans on the right, conservatives, we cannot scream about Joe Biden's condition and then sit there and blink an eye and wink at what they're doing with Mitch McConnell. It's the same thing. It's the same thing to me. It's worse. But I hope that we get the truth of it. As I said, right now, the only people that know is God and Mitch. That's about the only ones that know. And there are people that say they do, but I don't think they do. I don't think they do. Let's see what we got. Mary Cleveland says, in this era of AI and the ability to fake voices and pictures, McConnell needs to be seen to prove he still lives. I actually believe, Mary, I agree with that. And yeah, Cleo, I'd heard that too, that Thune claimed him and Barasco spoke with Connell and he's mentally fine. That is the epitome. And coming from John Thune was slowly becoming the Harry Reid of the Republican Party. Harry Reid was such a liar. And, I've talked to Amy Miller about this. He's from Amy's home state. There's a lot of history up there with Thune, and the people in South Dakota are perplexed as to what's happened to him. You know, I remember him during the Bush years, and he wasn't like this. He just wasn't like this. I think it's Trump. I just think Trump has gotten in his head, and his wife's a Democrat, his daughter's a Democrat, and and again, it goes back to elections, and it goes back to people being a chameleon to get elected, and then they get to D.C. and their true colors come out. It's just our politics and how messed up we are here. But Mary, to your point, I totally agree that Mitch needs to make an appearance in person. He needs to hold a press conference. And I'll put it like this. If he's so sick and he's so mentally hurt or mentally whatever, decapitated, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, folks, tonight. Folks, it's not funny. I mean, look, as far as the political situation, I can separate from the personal situation. I pray for Mitch McConnell's family tonight. If that was my father or my brother, I would not be making fun or saying anything bad about his condition. And I'm trying not to tonight. I watched X tonight, and it's really, I think it's in poor taste. All of these memes and all of these things that are mocking Mitch. I look at that just like I believe it was wrong for us on the right to mock Joe Biden. Even though Joe Biden was mentally incapacitated to be president. I believe that. But look, we cannot become the left. We do not need to get down in the ditch and do the same things that they do, and then we sit in our self-righteous chair of judgment and judge them for doing it, and then we do the same thing. It's not right. It's sinful. It just is. So I'm not saying this to mock him tonight. I feel for him as a person, but politically, I'm talking about leadership. He has no business being in that Senate seat. He should have resigned weeks ago. Bashir could do it tonight. He could declare a special election. He could declare Mitch incapacitated. I don't know how the legality of that is, but this shows you how hard, and it goes clear to your point about Thune. Thune wants to hang on to Mitch because Mitch is his wild card, and Mitch is the vote that is keeping the Save America Act from being passed. Mitch is totally opposed to that act, and if he's gone and somebody gets in there that votes for it, then Trump gets his wish. And folks, we're getting down to cases. It's July. We're in the 7th month. We got midterms coming up in 4 months. And we're going to reach a point probably by September, if this Save America Act ain't been passed, it won't have enough time to get implemented for the midterms anyway. And I think that's what Thune's trying to do. He's trying to run out the clock. Pathetic. All I got to say is that's pathetic. As all of Congress is tonight. As all of Congress is. But, all right, any other questions? I've got so much video to play, but I'm not going to have time to do it tonight. It's already 11 o'clock, and we have kept you 2 hours. And I will play one thing tonight, and this is, we talked about this, about the birthright stuff. We're going to have a show tomorrow night, but this was the billboard. President Trump is formally requesting the Supreme Court rehear the birthright case, citizenship case, as these billboards are popping up in Texas, advocating for Mexicans to cross the border and have birth here. The billboard campaign has now been pulled, of course. Of course it is, because it's been found out. HaveMyBabyInTexas.com. That's the name of it. The founders did not want this. Do the right thing, SCOTUS. In other words, to come over and have a baby, Mexico was willing to pay these couples $3,950 for natural births, a C-section, $5,525. Folks, that's the insanity of all this. Why Amy Coney Barrett couldn't see this at the start, I've got no answer for that. And, you know, I'm sort of tired of hearing people make excuses for Amy Coney Barrett. She is just as bad as those liberal justices. It's about women and men. When you get down to it, it's a woman-man thing. You got 5 men and 4 women. And I think there's a hatred in her heart for Trump. I don't think she's ever respected him. it's Mitch McConnell, by the way, has his hand in this. He's the one that told Trump, you need to get buried on that court, and lied to Trump about how she felt. And we're paying a price for it. This goes back to discernment. Anybody with a brain could have known this is what they were doing. They knew this. We all knew this. People on the right, conservatives knew this was going to happen. This is not shocking to me. I'm not perplexed by this tonight. This is exactly what I knew they were going to do. I'm surprised it took them this long. It took them this soon to do it. HaveMyBabyInTexas.com. What a website. It's been taken down now. SCOTUS. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Get your butts on the bench. Rehear this. And make the right call, Amy. Stop being swayed by your liberal T-buddies on the court, including Johnny J. Brown that don't even know what a woman is. One other quick thing. It's right at 11:15. I need to get out of here tonight. This is huge. We're going to follow this story. We're going to talk about this more tomorrow night. I'm going to turn the volume down on this, and I'll just read this. But former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin has filed for a new trial. In the death of George Floyd, supporters of the motion argue that key medical evidence, including Floyd's fentanyl use and underlying health issues, was not given proper weight, and believe Chauvin deserves a new trial. I'll amen that. I'll amen that tonight. I do believe he does. This is the situation from the Charlie Kirk trial. If I was Tyler Robinson tonight, I would be making peace with God. I would be making peace with God because the text that they found, Nick Sorter reported this afternoon, that he was squirming and swinging uncomfortably in his chair when the rifle was discussed, and text messages with Lance Twiggs were shown per Fox. Robinson's mom was also seen crying in the courtroom while details about Robinson using his grandpa's rifle were presented. It's going to be a really, really tough for Robinson to get out of this, and I agree with that without a doubt. This is... here's the text messages. This is what I wanted to play, and then we'll let you go tonight. Watch this video. This is the text messages that were revealed in court today.
So read that again, starting from look under the keyboard.
So after that, then Lance responds, he says, "What?" And then he says, "You're joking, right?" And then Tyler says, "Fuck, I tried to delete that."
You can scroll down to page 2. And if you can continue reading along.
Okay. And Tyler says, "I'm still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you." And then Lance replies, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" And Tyler says, "I am, I'm sorry." Lance says, "I thought they caught the person." And then Tyler says, "No, they grabbed some crazy old dude and interrogated someone in similar clothing. I planned to grab my rifle from the drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering."
We could scroll down to page 3. Continue reading.
And Lance says, "Why?" And Tyler says, "Why did I do it?" And Lance says, "Yeah." Tyler says, "I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I'm able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything in the news about them finding it. We'll update you shortly. We'll update you by midnight." And then Lance says, "All right, stay safe. How long have you been planning this?"
Scroll down a little bit, please, Kimberly.
And Tyler replies, "A bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it."
We can scroll down to page 4 and continue reading about halfway down. I'll stop you about halfway down.
This is while they were but I don't want to chance it while they're parked there. If they'd found it, I imagine that there would be more commotion. Again, I'm sorry for roping you into all of this. You shouldn't have to worry about this. And Lance replies, does anyone else know? Tyler says, not to my knowledge.
All right, I'll stop
Not
there.
to my knowledge, and that's the end of that video. That was played in courtroom today. By the way, folks, the defense tried to keep that out. The judge reluctantly let those texts go through. That's a sinker. That is a killer for Tyler Robinson. I mean, folks, you've got him basically confessing on a text message that he did it. Only thing I got to say about that, and I've got more to say about that tomorrow night, is that's Candace Owens tonight. I'd be lawyering up. I hope Erica Sue's lawsuit against her is huge. And I hope it bankrupts her and her husband. I do. And I don't wish that on many people. Candace has said some of the most vile things. And there's others that have said some vile things. And I want to just say this to the quote-unquote Christians out here that are sharing Candace's stuff out. You're just as vile as she. You're just as vile as her. And you've got if you think that Candace is a truth teller, you need an exorcist, a priest, and some, you might need some of that George Floyd meth to shake you out of your fog, because you've got to be the most insane, crazy individual in the universe to believe a word that comes out of Candace Owens' mouth. But you've got Christians that do. And you've got people that do. I never have. But these vile anti-Semitic remarks and this vile attack on Erica Kirk has been one of the most ugliest things I think I've ever seen to a widow of a martyred individual that all his life he did was try to stand up for this country and fight for freedom and fight for democracy and fight and to try to get these kids to see that their life would count for something if they would think right and get this communist crap out of their head. Charlie confronted that. And as like Mike said tonight, he never said anything bad about somebody. I wished I had that grace. I wish I had more of that grace. I'm learning to be like that more as I'm getting older. But what has grieved me the most has not been even Tyler Robinson, which it does hurt to see the devastation that that young man caused of this country and that family. It's very grievous. I pray for his soul, but I want to see justice done. But what really bothers me are people of faith that claim they have faith and claim they're in the know about everything, a bunch of know-it-alls about everything. And they've got no problem sharing out vile slander and the most vilest of vile comments and painting it as gospel and truth. You got to be insane to be doing that. You're full of the devil. You're full of the devil. You need to repent of it. And I'll leave it at that. You should have learned your lesson by posting another fraudster. You should have learned your lesson then, but you didn't. Because many of these same Christians was painting another individual that was claiming they were rescuing kids from the border. And anybody with even a third of a brain could have seen through that they were lying. And then they were doing some of the most vile things against people, suing people, putting liens on houses. Well, they're spending the rest of their natural-born life in federal prison, but after being promoted by many right-wing Christian voices as being a godly voice to the country. Folks, that kind of stuff bothers me far more than any of this other communist push. And I'll just leave it alone tonight. I'm about to get myself in trouble, so it's getting late. I'm gonna zip my mouth and put my hand over my mouth. But I hope Erica Kirk's lawsuit is big. Tyler Robinson's text just debunked everything Candace Owens has been saying for the last 6 months. Everything. She's been doing nothing but lying. It's called defamation of character and slander. You don't have to amen it. You don't have to amen that. I'll amen myself. I'll amen myself. I'll amen myself. And you don't have to get out here on this branch with me. That's okay. I'll get out here by myself. I've been used to that for 8 years. That's how I feel. These opinions are mine. Listen, what a great night. Bill Federer and Mike Wayman. Wasn't they great? Put some fire in that house. God bless you. God bless your families. We'll see you tomorrow night. Now, we're going to probably do a prayer event tomorrow night. We're not going to go all night, but we are going to go a couple hours into the night to pray for our country again. So be sure to tune into our Faith Network, Spirit and Word Fire Network at midnight. But we'll have a show tomorrow night. It'll be late. Some video, and we won't have a guest. It'll probably just me, which is, I don't know if that's good or bad. But we'll see. We'll see. You could do worse. You could do better. I guess it's just how you view the show. The haters will think you could do better. The people that love us to death will think you could do worse. So we can't please everybody. But it'll be me tomorrow night. And we'll show you some video and talk about some other things. The latest in Iran, we're still bombing them tonight. Israel warned our president that he was the target of an assassination attempt. I do need to play this one video. If you'll just give me 1 minute. Trump was talking to the people on Air Force One today. They asked him about this, and he answered them as only Donald Trump could answer them. And I'll let you listen to this. This is why we love him. This is why some hate him. This is why I love him, because it's Donald Trump.
No, I have no idea. I have no idea how he's doing.
That's the wrong video. They were asking about Mitch McConnell. He's got another video. We'll have to find it for tomorrow night. But they asked him about the threat, and Donald Trump said, well, they were threatening to take down Air Force One, and if they take me down, you're going with it. So if you don't think that that's cool, you might want to get another profession. He's telling the truth. If you're a reporter at Air Force One and that bothers you, you might not want to be flying Air Force One if you think the Israelis are giving him good advice, which I do believe they're giving him good advice, and so forth. We'll talk about that tomorrow night. Did you enjoy the show tonight? Put some fire in that house. Have a good night, everybody. It's late. Grateful you've been with us. Have a good one tonight. And see you back here in the morning on the Bible study and tomorrow night. And we're going to pray for the country late tomorrow night. Not all night, but we're going to have a mini prayer watch. God bless you all. Have a good night.